Hi, everyone. It's Janet. In response to some of the concerns that were shared at our last Zoom session regarding data collection and progress monitoring and assessments, we thought it would be a great idea to kind of present some information to kind of help you out with that in case you are planning on working on it over the spring break. In regards to lesson planning and whether or not you're going to be implementing that in your field settings. So we are going to work in more detail on this topic at our face-to-face session, but in consideration of time, we thought it might be great to kind of give you some introductory content, some helpful tips and tricks, and kind of go into the back end of data collection before we go to face-to-face where we're going to be doing more hands-on activities. So I hope you find this helpful. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. But yes, let's continue on. Okay, so what I'm going to do just for this recording is I'm going to kind of talk about the rationale of why we do data collection, the scope and sequence, how it all fits together. Then I'm going to create a data sheet using our IEP case study example that we had talked about earlier. And then I'll do another data sheet that will go into our lesson planning example that we had shared. And then to wrap things up, I'm just going to kind of give a couple tips and tricks that I've learned over the years in regards to using Microsoft Word to create data sheets. All right, so why do we even need to do this? Why is it so important to actually monitor progress? It's the idea that, it's not just about the outcome. It's, learning's a process. It's not just a destination. And we've kind of talked about that in one of the very first weeks of this course when we were talking about different kinds of assessments. If we give a one-stop shop assessment to a child, like the state exam for third grade, and they don't do well on it, that shouldn't be an indicator of what they know. The teacher who had been working with that child will have a better idea of exactly what that child does know because that teacher has been monitoring the progress all along the way. And so I think it's really important to always keep in mind that it's not just about the summative assessments that come at the end. The formative assessments that you're kind of doing throughout your teaching is almost just as important, if not more important in some cases, in regards to really knowing how to support our students best. And so another reason is that you kind of need to know where you are at, and then you need to know where you're going. And so that's kind of the idea behind progress monitoring. Because time is so essential, especially with students, that are receiving special education services, they're already behind. And so when it comes to what you're going to teach, you need to make sure that you're making the best use of their time. And the way you do that is knowing exactly on what they need to know next and how to build off what they already know. And so that's what kind of progress monitoring can help you do. And then again, it ends up being evidence of growth. So while we do have both formative and summative assessments, you can use both of those to kind of share with parents and to guide your teaching and everything to really kind of have a better idea on how the student is doing. Okay, so I keep showing this, but I just kind of want to always refer back to how everything connects. So in regards to this process that we've been talking about all semester, monitoring student progress really comes in where the instruction happens as well as the annual review. And why that is you're obviously going to want to kind of track student progress as you're teaching. Throughout lessons, or if you're fitting it on the side one-to-one, it doesn't really matter, but definitely, at day after day, when you are teaching, you are collecting some kind of student progress. And then that kind of leads up to the annual review, especially when it comes to the IEP for special education, is you have to sit down with the team, the IEP team, and show them exactly how the child has performed on all of those different objectives over the year. That way you know where you're at and you can design the next IEP for the next year. And so monitoring student progress really comes in handy if you have all of that collected somewhere nice that you can refer to. It really makes that whole process go much smoother. Okay, so going back to what we had shared earlier, The first step goes back to identifying the need, which was in your PLEP that you designed. So this is the, for special education, so the IEP case study. So the one we had talked about as a group was this need to be able to blend sounds in single syllable words. And then we found the standard that goes with that, which is 1.rf.2b, orally produced single syllable words by blending sounds, which are called phonemes, including consonant blends. Then we broke it down and we gave a couple examples of some objectives that you could create. For example, when given a list of 20 single syllable words without consonant blends, the student will give each letter, sound, and blend together independently to read 95% of words independently in 3 consecutive probes. And then when given a list of 20 single syllable words with consonant blends, for example, blah, st, dr, or spla, the student will send out each part and blend together independently to read 95% of words independently in 3 consecutive probes. I just realized independently is in there twice. You don't need that. Okay, so here we are. Now we're at monitoring progress. So now that we have that, we have our need, we have our standard and our goal, and then we have our objectives. What are we going to do to actually track the progress on this particular objective? So you want to ask yourself, well, what do you already have? And then you ask, what do you still need? And then you can always create your own data sheets. And again, one reason I like to actually do this at the very beginning, so usually when I get a new student or we develop a new IEP, I'll actually spend the next couple days creating data sheets for every single objective that was in that IEP, because I like to just already have that and create these nice little folders for each student, because not only does it help you so that you have an easy way to access and take data throughout the year, but when you're developing these data sheets, sometimes it'll actually give you a clue if there were any errors present, like if something doesn't make sense. Usually when you're creating the data sheet, you start to ask yourself those questions, and then you can try and figure those out ahead of time. Okay, so here we go. So let's create our own data sheets. So again, this was the IEP case study example. So this is what it looked like once you put all of those things into the IEP template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to a Word document, which I have right here, and I'm going to show you. Okay, so I have this IEP goal and objective, and it's the beginning of the year, or the student just got qualified, and I was given this IEP, and now I need to figure out a way to monitor the progress for this. So you can do this in a number of ways. But for the most part, I usually will start out with the student's name. Okay, I'm going to put whoever it is in there. Okay. Another tip and trick is sometimes you'll want to put the IEP date, like when the next IEP is actually going to be done. So for example, if this IEP was created on March 18th of 2019, then you'll have to renew the next IEP before March 18th in 2020. So you would just put that in there so you can kind of keep track of where you are in regards to that timeline. Okay, then if you want to, you can go ahead and put the standard in. So let me, oh, I took a screenshot. I can't copy and paste it. Okay, so you would just copy and paste that in there. Then you'll do your annual goal, write that in. And then here you go, your objective. So this is where you want to go. Okay, so what I typically do is I'm gonna actually draft this out on a sheet of paper first before I actually start going into Microsoft Word. And so I do have one right next to me that you can't see. But I just recommend that because it'll kind of help you just think of the design side before you actually start working with it. But when you're actually ready to design, here are some ways to do this. So a popular thing that you'll want to do is to create a table. So you can use these blocks, which will actually tell you, how wide and long you want to make it. But for the most part, I will actually click on this one, insert table, and tell it exactly how many columns and how many rows I want. So for this particular one, I'm going to use 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to use 5 columns. Okay, and then number of rows, how many times do you think you're going to actually measure this? So let's say I'll just do 30. And you can actually set it, or you can tell it how wide and how big to make it. But usually I'll just keep it on that auto. Okay, so here we go. So for this one, I'm going to want the date. So I want to know, well, when did I check for this progress? Then, because we are looking at, so let me put this up here again. So the objective is, when given a list of 20 single syllable words without consonant pens, students will give each letter, sound, and blend together to read 95% of words independently in 3 consecutive rows. Okay, so I'm going to move this over because the date doesn't actually need to be that big, okay? Now what we're going to measure, so we're going to look at the types of words. So I'm talking about some words are going to have the short A sound. Some are going to have an E. Some are going to have an I. Some are going to have an O. And some are going to have a U. And those little brackets around it means that we're looking for the sound and not the actual letter. So this is A, E, I, So the reason I'm doing this is because you could do it a number of ways. So you could just say that the first section is going to be working only on the short A sound, and then you could have another one that's doing the short E, and then you can have another one that's doing the short I. If you want to do that, that's fine, but you never know how the student is going to do. Maybe they're going to pick it up so quickly that you're going to make that decision that you're going to be able to maybe combine, and the next time you'll do A and E words, and then after that, maybe they did really well. You want to do A, E, and I. So what I'm going to do is I've decided that I'm going to give myself the choice to know and circle which types of words are going to be within that certain list that I had just given. And so an easy way to do that then would be to copy this, which is Control-C, and then you can just paste it, Control-V, into all of your lines. Okay, another way I could have done it was I could have just started out with a couple lines. This would actually have been faster, and then copy and pasted the whole line afterwards. But okay, so this is what we're doing. So let's say well, here, let's keep going first. So that's the type of words that I'm going to do. Then we need the accuracy, right? We're shooting for 95%. Okay, so you're just going to, out of the 20, however many they got, you're going to write it in. And then, did they meet this objective? And you could put yes, and then maybe a space, no. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to make it in the center. Again, this doesn't need to take up that much space, so let me go here. Okay, accuracy doesn't really take up that much space either. Okay, and then again, here's another one. I'm going to show you guys. And then notes. So sometimes I always like to have a notes section just in case you want to actually say like, hey, something happened, and make note of it. I'm going to spread these out a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to show you a quicker way to do this. Okay, I just deleted all of that. So now I'm just going to copy this. So Control-C, and watch, I'm going to just go Control-V, V, 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 and then I can make as many as I want. So let's say, let me just fill this out for you. So I'm going to give a list of 20 single syllable words to this student, and I'm going to do it today, which is the 18th. So I'm going to say 3, 18, 19, okay? And then the list of words that I'm giving is only A. So I'm going to have this printed out, right? So I could just circle it, or if you have a highlighter, you can highlight it. Let's say the student was able to read, let's say 12 of the words, okay? So 12 would be 60%. Okay, does that meet it? No, we're trying to get to 90%. So we would say no, and I would say, you know, had trouble with the, had trouble blending the final sound. Okay, and I would write that in. Okay, then I do it again. Let's say a couple days later. Let's go for the 22nd. I'm going to give a new list of words. I'm going to stick with A because the student did not master it earlier. And let's say we've been working on class a bunch of times. We've had a little bit of homework. That student got to work with their parents, and she got 19 correct. That would be 95%. Yay! Next. Okay. Notes if needed. Now, so the goal is once I hit 3 yeses in a row, and it has to be in a row because it says consecutive, then I would make the decision, okay, now the next time I'm going to give words for A and E. Okay, and then you keep going that. Maybe it's a no, maybe it's a yes, yes. And then if it goes back to no, then you'd say, uh-oh, it's not consecutive. I got to start over. Yes, yes, yes. And then say, okay, they met it. So now let's add in I. And that's how you kind of monitor it. And so, you know, some of these decisions you're going to make as you go along, but for the most part, you're going to be able to visually see and keep track. So when it comes time to writing up like a report card or your progress monitoring sheets, or sit down with parents, you can just take out your little sheet that you've been collecting data on and show them exactly how the child has been doing. Okay, so that's an example of how you could design a sheet for this particular objective. Okay, now I wanted to show you a different way by doing the second part of this objective. So the next one, so I'm going to go insert. I want to break. Where's the break? Oh, here you go. Page break. Okay, so new objective. What was the other part? We had, when given a list of 20 single syllable words with consonant blends, a student will sound out each part and blend together independently. Oh, no, I'm going to take that out because we have it twice. Blend together to read 95% of the words independently in 3 consecutive. Okay, so that's our second objective. So we need a new table. So go to table, insert table. This time I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to say 14 columns. And then I will do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So again, I'm looking at my draft. That's why I actually have a number. Okay, so here we go. So this one's a little bit different. And the reason for that is, let's say you are gonna do some blends, okay? And let's say you don't even know, like, what are all the consonant blends? Well, you can just look it up. Okay, so here's some consonant blends. And this is where you should be using, we're gonna talk about later some, you know, good resources for finding things rather than just Googling them. For the purpose of this, I'm just gonna Google it, but I'll show you a reason why this is so important. Consonant blends and digraphs are different things. And so, for example, this list right here that they're showing you is showing you both. It's showing you consonant blends and consonant digraphs, and that's just some terminology you're going to have to get familiar with. But look, they even have a little thing that teaches you the difference between them. Consonant blends are when you have 2 letters that blend together and you can actually hear both sounds. So like blah is b, ul, blah. Okay, you can hear both sounds. A digraph, on the other hand, is when you put two letters together and it makes a completely different sound, such as CH. CH, if you did it in its own, would be k, h, and you don't put k, it actually changes the sound to ch. And so you have to teach children to actually understand that CH makes ch. So I don't really like this list because I don't want these digraphs in here, which is CH, SH for sh, WH, and TH. So I'm going to use all the other ones, but I'm not going to use those 4 digraphs. That's just a little side tip right there. But anyway, so that's how you can kind of look it up. And so for this one, since there's so many, and some of them are harder than others, what I figured I would do, oops, look, I'm even using the wrong term. So the blend, I'm going to just put the different blends in here. So BL, BR, I don't like how it's capitalizing everything. I'm skipping CH. CK is at the end. I'm going to stick with beginning sounds. CL, CR, CR, FL, FR. You get the idea. I'm not going to do all of them. Okay, and then I'm actually going to use this section to actually be my dates. So I'm not going to write, I'm just going to show you that these would all be dates, and then at the end I'm going to put notes, met, yes or no. Ooh. Okay, the accuracy. Okay, and then these are my dates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 dates, that's pretty good. And then down here I'm going to put a key. So plus is going to mean correct. Minus will mean incorrect. And then I usually use a VP for verbal prompt. That just means you needed to give like a hint. Okay, so whenever you kind of help them, like they kind of did it, but they kind of didn't, then I would use VP. And so the reason I've changed it from this system to this system is the fact that if we were to put all the blends in here, yes, you could. That would be fine. But these skills are a little bit different. So the way I would do it is, let's say I had 20 single syllable words and I only wanted to focus in on the B's and the F's. Then I could use our key to really mark in there, like maybe they got the first BL word correct, and then they got it wrong, and they got it correct, and then they had a BR word, and they just kept getting those all wrong. So, oh, look, automatic formatting sometimes messes this up. But you wouldn't do this. You'd be doing this by hand, so it wouldn't do that. And then the FL, like maybe they were awesome. They really understood that. And the FR, again, pretty good, but some errors every once in a while. And that's how you could keep track of different sounds on that particular date. So in the end, you would have 20 of these symbols. Oh, here, maybe this is a verbal prompt. Okay, so in the end, you'd have 20 of these, and then you could, oh, see? And that just proves to me that I did it wrong. There you go. So you need your percentage accuracy down here. Right? Because you're going to count all of these up here, and you're going to put in the percentage of the accuracy for that given day. And what's cool is you can keep this one as well, because you want to see the accuracy for each of these sounds, because maybe some of these sounds are mastered, but some of the other ones aren't. And then as you move along, you can kind of tailor it to only do the ones that they actually need to work on. And so this is kind of cool in the sense that you can do it. You can calculate across sounds, or you can calculate across days. But then you actually would, so I need a new row, insert below. I would put M here, and then yes or no would actually go here. Oh. Okay. It's not working right now. Okay, so yes, no, yes, no. You get the idea. Okay. And then I can remove this by pushing delete. And notes I could either keep here in regards to the sounds, or I could put it down here. So anytime you want to add, you can just go insert, rows below. And actually, I'm going to just put notes down here. We actually have space. And then when you're writing your notes, you usually put your date. 1919. And then you can just write your notes, here. La, 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 la. And then I can remove this one too. Okay, so here's two data sheets. So one for the without consonant blends, and then one with the consonant blends. And so this is how you would design ones for IEP objectives. Okay, hope that makes sense. Okay, so moving on. Now, sometimes you have to create sheets, data sheets for the actual lesson that you are teaching. So the same concept kind of applies, but instead of focusing on a single child, now you're focusing on the whole class. So what are you going to do? So I'm going to start a new sheet right here. Okay. So I'm using the example lesson that we're sharing with you in regards to the lesson on the Kalo. And so what I did was I pulled it from the lesson plan template. So here's the standards that were addressed. Okay, so in terms of the science standards for first grade, it was structure, function, and information processing. So all organisms have external parts. Different animals use their body parts in different ways to see, hear, grasp objects, protect themselves, move from place to place, and seek, find, and take in food and water. Okay, so that's our standard. And then in the example that we gave, here is the general lesson objective. So when provided with a Kalo plant and or illustration of a Kalo plant, students will identify the four main parts of the plant that enable the plant to grow and reproduce. And then, for example, those parts that we're looking for are the leaves, stem, corm, and roots with 100% accuracy. And then there's some other embedded objectives. So this is where you're trying to tailor it and differentiate based on different needs for students. And so you can see that there's two other students here that have their own objectives, which hopefully you would already have pre-made because you had done these things for every single one of your students that have an IEP. But again, if you needed to create one, you could just do the exact same thing that you had done here and create a separate one for whatever it is that you're targeting for someone who might be performing above or below this general lesson objective. Okay, but so for the lesson plan, for the activities, the individual performance independent practice is the one that you're going to need to create a data sheet for. So the lesson objective is each student will be provided with an illustration of Kalo parts. A student will cut out labels and label the illustrations accurately with the correct term for different parts. Oh, we already had that. I'm just going to leave that. Okay. All right, so we need to create a data sheet. So again, I've scratched something, I put something on scratch paper and kind of labeled it out. But what I'm going to do again is I'm going to insert a table. Okay, so if you can recall from the example that we gave, we had 21 students in this grade. So you're going to want to create a couple more than that because you're going to need a heading and you might want to calculate something at the end. So instead of 21, I'm going to say 23. And then in terms of columns, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4 because you're labeling, right? You're labeling 4 things. Then you want the percentage, so that's 5. You want an area for notes, so that's 6. And then you want a place to put your students, so that's 7. So we're going to have 7 columns. Okay, so you're gonna start off with your student, and this is where you're gonna put your roster. So student A, student B, and then dot, 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 okay? Until you get to student 21, okay? And you would actually put their names in here. I am going to bold this to make it look a little different. Okay, then we want them to label the correct parts. So the first part was the leaves, and then the stem, and then the corn, and the roots. And then you want to know, okay, what was their accuracy on that? Accuracy, and then notes. Now notes would be kind of hard to write in here, so luckily we don't actually need all of this space for each part. So I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to take the notes out a little bit farther. And another trick is that whenever you need to change something within the whole table, you can just click on that little sign right there and it'll highlight it, and then you have lots of features. So let's say I wanted more space to write, then I could actually change the height of it. So you can see how there's more space in here. And that would do it across all of them to make it more equal. But of course, that is going to take up more printer space. I personally prefer to have everything as small as possible because I want to print it out on one page. And so if I can, I will just write teeny tiny or just make very simple notes in here. And then you can either put the key on what you're going to use down here, like plus is correct, minus is incorrect, verbal prompt is verbal prompt. Or what I kind of like to do, especially if it's going to stretch over multiple pages, because maybe you have a lot, is I'm going to cut that out. And if you double click on the top part of your sheet, this is called your header. And you can put something in there. So maybe, even maybe the lesson objective would be kind of cool to put in there. So let me do this. Cut that out. Double click on the top, paste that back in. Okay. So what happens is when you close this, after you've put in your information, it's on the top and it's kind of grayed out, so it's not as noticeable, but it's there. And what'll happen is, let's say your table was super long, okay, and it went on to the next page. Let's just say we have about 50 students in our class. So what happens is, you see how it jumped onto the next page, but guess what happened? Your header is still showing up at the top. So the lesson objective and the key. So that's why headers are really great, because you can, if it's information that you're going to need across each page, then I would suggest double clicking and sticking it in there so that you can have it on every page that you're doing. Okay. So, sorry, student 21 kind of got messed up. Okay. So that's how you could make a very simple sheet. And then, for example, let's say the student got everything correct. Oops. Plus, 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 100%. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. And then this person. Mixed up and okay, and then maybe that student C who's like just couldn't even get started, and really you just had to sit there and kind of help guide. They ended up getting it, but you kind of helped them. And then maybe you just say, okay, this one was a one-to-one walked through the task. And so they would get a 0% independent, this one's 50%. And you can keep your track there. But then again, one thing you might also want to do is, after everything's said and done and you've put in all the data from your students that day, you can kind of calculate, maybe you want to do the accuracy across. So maybe if all the errors, like let's say leaves were easy, you know, like 95% of the class got leaves. STEM was pretty good, 90%, but corn was here at like 45%, and then roots was 80%. Then what that would tell you is you really need to go back and just find another way to get them to identify the quorum and remember what that is. And so you might teach like a follow-up lesson the next day where you address just this. And so again, that's formative, right? You're taking this data as you go to kind of guide your instruction. Whereas, hey, if everybody got 100%, then good, you're ready to move on. But yeah, so that's how you can create a little objective data sheet for something specific to your actual lesson. Okay, so some additional tips and tricks. Again, I do recommend always kind of drafting out what you want to do first and kind of messing with it on paper before you actually move on to the computer and do it in Microsoft Word. Identify the important key points. So, you know, what are you looking for? Always pull that from the objectives that you've actually written. And if you're not familiar with Microsoft Word and how to really use and modify and design with these things, I recommend, you know, you can go on YouTube and kind of just look up demos. But here, let me show you some other cool stuff while I have you here. So another thing that you can do with tables, they say, is that you can pull this out, go to the design, and here, like, let's say it's hard for you to kind of see. You have all these options of things that'll make it look a little bit different. So look here. So now you have your, you know, what you're measuring it upon. So everything that's labeled, and then you have your information on the inside. So that's kind of cool. You could do that. Maybe you really like color and you want to change it to blue. Or you can manually go and do all of these things. So let's say you just wanted to highlight this top column and make it a different color. You could do that. You could even change the border style. So if you wanted to make it a little bit thicker or a double line, you can actually paint it onto the line that you want to do. Let's see, the pen color. Oh, here's a good one. So let's say you want to just do certain types of lines for different things, then you could actually choose, like if you didn't want any borders at all, you could click that and it would get rid of it. Okay. But if you like the borders, you can put them back, or maybe you just want them on the outside. Okay, so lots of cool features that you can do. And so you kind of want to play around with it. Get used to it, look at it. Some other easy ones is maybe you want more space for the notes and you want to change your orientation to be landscape, so that here you go. Now you can bring that out even farther. And so it's shorter, but it's longer. Also margins, so it's always set to normal, but you can do narrow to give yourself even more space. So let's say you had a whole bunch of stuff that you wanted to put in there. You might want to make it even longer. Okay, text direction is kind of cool. Like, let's say you wanted, you know, instead of making each of these columns super long, you wanted to make them shorter, then you can actually make the title of it go the opposite way. So then look at this, I can totally make it even smaller in there. And it's because I've done that rather than having it go to the right. You can use line numbers. So if I were to highlight these. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Never mind. But there's a way that you can actually number each line in the document. Indentations, let's see. This is also fun stuff. If you're like me and you like color and design, you can actually choose a theme of colors for your whole document. And so you can look at all the different kinds of options they give you here. And you can also create your own sheet shapes and things like that, but that's getting a little more detailed. But for the purposes of data collection, I think learning how to design tables in a Word document will be very beneficial. And so finally, just to wrap up, like I said, one of the things that I learned over the years when I was teaching is once I got to that phase where I would just start creating IEP data sheets as soon as I got a new IEP. I would do one for each objective that's listed, and then I would have folders for each child. And what I would do is I would keep those folders all together, kind of like in the back of the classroom next to a small table, like a bean-shaped table, L-shaped table, whatever they're calling them. I usually would have a table in the back of my classroom where whenever I had some time, let's say the students are working on something and one student finishes early, rather than having the student just sit there and wait for everybody else to finish, I would call that student to the back of the room to come sit with me. I'd pull out their folder, their IEP folder, and I would look, okay, what can I work on? And I would use the data that's already in there to see, oh yeah, you know what, we need to work on our blending of sounds. Let's go ahead and do that for the next 10 minutes while everybody else is finishing their assignment. And so really, like, by having all these data sheets made early, you're able to fit it in whenever you can, because sometimes people, you know, teacher candidates are always asking, like, when am I going to have time to do all this? I'm teaching my lessons. How am I supposed to also get to the IEP objectives? And this is kind of how you do it. You really fit it in whenever you can. You try to take advantage and capitalize of all the minutes in the day that you have with each child. And so this is just a way to kind of give you that setup so that you are actually able to do that. But again, if you have any questions, concerns, just let us know. Otherwise, we will definitely be actually doing more on data collection and progress monitoring with you at the face-to-face. So I look forward to seeing you there. I hope you are enjoying your spring break, and I'll see you soon. Thanks.